In the dead of night, along the desolate stretches of Highway 29, trucker Eli Marston was hauling a late shipment of electronics destined for the outskirts of Phoenix. Eli, a seasoned driver with more than a decade under his belt, had driven this route countless times before, but tonight felt different. The air was heavier, the night darker, and an unnerving silence filled the cab of his truck. As he crossed into a particularly remote section of the highway, his radio began to crackle. Static drowned out the late-night tunes he typically listened to, a minor annoyance, he initially thought, until a voice broke through the static. It was soft and whispering, repeating the same phrase over and over, "Turn back." Thinking it was just a prank from another bored trucker on the same lonely stretch, Eli shook his head and increased the volume of the music, trying to drown out the interference. However, the voice grew louder, more insistent. "Turn back, turn back, turn back." Suddenly, his headlights flickered, catching a glimpse of something off to the side of the road, a figure, it seemed, standing just at the edge of the beam's reach. Heart pounding, Eli slowed down, squinting to see better. But as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. Shaken, Eli contemplated turning around, but his schedule was tight. Several miles further, Eli noticed his temperature gauge climbing rapidly. His truck was overheating. Cursing under his breath, he pulled over, the voice still whispering in the background of his now nearly inaudible radio. With flashlight in hand, Eli popped the hood to inspect the engine. The steam was thick, and as it cleared, he jumped back in horror. There, carved into the inner mechanics of the truck in a chilling, deliberate scrawl, was the word "leave." Eli's breath caught in his throat. His eyes darted around the pitch-black surroundings, searching for any sign of movement. Nothing but the whisper of the wind greeted him. Eli hurried back to the cab, locking the doors and deciding to ignore the engine until he reached a more populated area. As he started the truck and pulled back onto the highway, the temperature normalized as if nothing had been wrong. The whispers in the radio ceased, and the rest of the drive passed without incident. When Eli finally reached his destination, weary and unnerved, he mentioned the incident to a local at the delivery dock. The worker's face turned pale as he listened. He told Eli that Highway 29 was known among locals for strange occurrences. Many had seen apparitions and experienced mechanical troubles in the same stretch of road where Eli had heard the whispering voice. It was rumored that a tragic accident had occurred there years ago, where a driver, ignoring warnings from locals about a sharp, poorly marked turn, had veered off the road, his life ending tragically in the ravine below. Eli left Phoenix with a new route planned for his return. He wasn't sure what to make of what had happened, but he knew one thing for certain: he would never travel Highway 29 at night again. Weeks passed since the unsettling encounter on Highway 29, but the experience lingered in Eli's mind like a stubborn shadow. Back on his usual routes, he found himself more cautious, his eyes often darting to the radio, half expecting it to crackle to life with whispers. But nothing happened. Life on the road returned to its normal rhythm, and the incident began to feel more like a bad dream, until one night, while crossing through New Mexico. Eli was approaching a stretch of Route 66 famed for its historical landmarks and eerie, abandoned places when his truck's headlights began to flicker once again. The sense of déjà vu hit him hard, his hands tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles whitening. He remembered the voice, the warning, and the dread that had filled him that night. He pulled over, heart racing as he waited for something to happen. But there was only silence and the soft hum of his idling engine. Resolved not to let fear get the better of him, Eli continued his journey. Minutes later, his radio crackled and a voice, different from the first but equally eerie, whispered, "Watch the road." This time, however, Eli's reaction was swift and pragmatic. He slowed down, his eyes scanning the dark highway ahead with intense focus. As he rounded a sharp bend, his headlights illuminated a figure standing in the middle of the road, a man, arms raised as if warning him to stop. Eli slammed on his brakes, stopping mere inches from the figure. The man, looking wild-eyed and desperate, approached the truck cab, mouthing a thank you as he backed away into the night, leaving Eli bewildered in his truck. After a few moments to collect himself, Eli stepped out and looked around, but the man had vanished as if he were a figment of his imagination. Shaken, Eli reported the incident to the local authorities, who later informed him that he wasn't the first driver to have stopped for the man. According to them, he was a local hermit known to wander the area at night, often finding himself in dangerous situations due to his disorientation. This encounter, though less menacing than the first, reinforced the mysteriousness of the road in Eli's eyes. He began to research and learn that many truckers had tales of strange happenings along their routes: phantom hitchhikers, ghostly warnings, unexplained lights, and shadows that moved just beyond the reach of their headlights. These roads, it seemed, kept the echoes of their histories alive in ways that modern day often forgot. Eli's experiences changed the way he spoke about the road. No longer just a seasoned trucker, he became a storyteller, sharing his tales with fellow drivers as a way to caution them, but also to connect with the ancient, mysterious spirit of the routes they all shared. His journeys continued, peppered now with a respectful awareness of the unknown, and a keen ear tuned to the whispers of the road, ready to heed their warnings at a moment's notice. As the months turned into years, Eli's reputation grew, not only as a reliable trucker but also as a keeper of the road's secrets. His stories, passed around in truck stops and over CB radios, began to take on a life of their own, each retelling adding a layer of mystique to the places he'd been and the shadows he'd encountered. Eli found himself drawn more and more to these tales and began visiting other infamous stretches of road across the country, collecting stories of the paranormal and unexplained. His cab became his mobile archive, filled with notes, recorded testimonies, and maps marked with locations of reported sightings and incidents. One evening, while traveling a known haunted segment of an old highway in Louisiana, Eli's radio, once again, broke into static. This time, however, the voice that emerged was clear, singing an old folk song that chilled him to the bone. The melody was melancholic, a voice from another time, fading in and out like a signal lost in the wind. As he listened, the atmosphere around him seemed to shift, the air grew cooler, and a dense fog rolled over the road, reducing his visibility to just a few feet ahead. Suddenly, his headlights caught a flash of something white moving across the road. Eli braked hard, his heart pounding as he peered through the dense fog. There, in the beam of his headlights, stood a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her face sorrowful as she looked right at him before vanishing into the mist. Stunned, Eli pulled over, trying to process what he had seen. He knew this road was rumored to be haunted by the White Lady, a ghost said to be searching for her lost love, but he had never truly believed it until now. Determined to find answers, Eli began to dig deeper into the history of the area, speaking with locals and unearthing the tragic story of a young woman who had died on her wedding night, her carriage overturned in a storm as she traveled this very road. This encounter marked a turning point for Eli. No longer content to simply pass through these haunted stretches, he started documenting his experiences with video and audio recordings, hoping to capture evidence of the phenomena he encountered. His blog, Whispers of the Road, attracted a following of both skeptics and believers, all drawn to the mysteries of the nocturnal highways. Eli's nights were no longer just about making deliveries, they became missions to uncover and document the spectral history of America's roads. Each trip was a new chapter in his ongoing journey into the unknown, his truck a vessel steering him deeper into the shadowy heart of the country's forgotten highways and byways. And as he drove through the night, the lines between legend and reality blurred, leaving him, and his audience, wondering what mysteries the road would whisper next. On a particularly stormy night, Eli decided to return to the very stretch of Highway 29 that had first introduced him to the otherworldly whispers of the road. He felt compelled to confront whatever forces had reached out to him, seeking closure or perhaps a deeper understanding. The storm intensified as he neared the infamous location, lightning sporadically illuminating the dark, twisted path ahead. As he approached the spot where he had heard the first whispers, his radio suddenly burst to life, static filling the cab before that same eerie voice whispered, "You came back." The tone was different this time, less a warning and more an acknowledgement, as if the presence had been waiting for his return. Eli stopped the truck, his heart racing as he stared into the abyss of the storm. He grabbed his video camera, intent on documenting whatever might occur, and stepped out into the pelting rain. The wind howled around him, almost drowning out the continued whispers from the radio now sitting on the passenger seat. "Watch the road," the voice whispered again, just as a bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, causing it to crash across the road just meters in front of his truck. The near miss was too close, too perfectly timed to be mere coincidence. As Eli filmed the fallen tree, he noticed something in the viewfinder. There was a figure standing behind the tree, obscured by the rain and shadows. Focusing the camera, Eli tried to call out, but the howling wind swallowed his words. He took a step closer, his camera trained on the figure, which seemed to be motionless, almost blending into the storm itself. Suddenly, the figure moved toward him, its movements unnatural, jerky, as if puppeteered by the gusting winds. Eli's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the figure was not moving on its own, it was being dragged. His camera captured a horrifying sight, spectral hands, barely visible and yet undeniably there, pulling the figure toward Eli. He stumbled back, falling into the mud as his camera dropped to the ground, still recording. The last footage on Eli's camera showed him scrambling to his feet, turning to run back to his truck. The video was shaky, rain obscuring most of it, but the whispers were clear, now a chorus of voices chanting, "Never leave." As Eli reached his truck, the video captured a final flash of lightning, revealing dozens of ghostly figures surrounding the vehicle, their faces twisted in sorrow and anger. The camera feed abruptly cut to static. Eli Marston was never seen again. His truck was found abandoned on Highway 29, door ajar, radio crackling with static, and his camera lying in the mud a few feet away. The last video on his blog remained posted, a chilling and unexplained testament to his final encounter. The whispers of the road had claimed him, it seemed, pulling him into the lore he'd sought to uncover, leaving behind only echoes and shadows.